an inability to deal with sugar that we normally take in our diets to give us energy. So in some people, their body cannot produce enough insulin to deal with the sugar that's circulating in our blood. And in some people, um, they totally do not produce insulin to be able to lower their blood sugars. As a consequence, their blood sugar gets elevated, and that leads to a multitude of problems that affects virtually every organ system in their body. So the significance of the day tomorrow is something we will talk in detail about, but we mentioned insulin. So this year marks 100 years since insulin was discovered. Insulin became like a magic bullet which transformed the lives of people who have been suffering from diabetes. So
I may later on get your definition of insulin. May I ask you what is insulin?
Insulin is actually a chemical produced by the body, by the pancreas. So this insulin is what actually helps to break down the food. So what happens in diabetes is, for some people, they have no production of insulin. That is type 1 diabetes. The body does not produce insulin, so all they need is that insulin to help break down the food. So it was actually known as the insulin-dependent diabetes. So for other people, like type 2 diabetes, that's the adult onset, usually they have the insulin, but the insulin is not sensitive enough to detect the body, or there is not enough insulin being produced. So this insulin is like a chemical that actually acts on the food. So if there is food and there is no insulin, like Dr. Abba said, that sugar will be very high, and this can cause a lot of
Give us the chemical ingredients of insulin.
So insulin essentially is composed of amino acids. Those are the building blocks. It's just a peptide chain. So amino acids, when they come together, they form a peptide chain. And when peptides come together, they form proteins, or they can form enzymes, or they can form hormones, or it depends, various chemicals. So insulin essentially is a hormone, which what a hormone is, it's a chemical substance that the body produces from a specific area, and it travels to other parts of the body and influences its activity there. So specifically what insulin does is insulin facilitates the movement of glucose from the bloodstream inside the cells so that it can be burned, because glucose is the fuel that the body uses. Body can use other fuels like fatty acids or ketone bodies, but essentially glucose is the main fuel that the body uses, including the brain. So insulin facilitates the movement of glucose from the bloodstream inside cells so that the cells can get the fuel, they can get the energy to be able to function and do other activities, like energy to think, energy to do some physical activity, energy to even do digestion. So all these are absolutely dependent on the availability of energy in the body.
Some people do not understand when they say sugar. They may think it's this ordinary sugar,
Yes.
sukurambi, for egg, whatever they try to describe to them.
Yes.
What kind of sugar are we talking about here? Not the sugar we take to sweeten our, our tea or coffee or whatever.
Essentially, the sugar we use daily in the homes, that white substance or brown substance, is actually sucrose. It's coming from sugar cane. So it's a bigger molecule. So when it gets in the body, enzymes break it. What is sugar? It's just carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. They are linked together by chemical bonds or some association. So there are specific enzymes in the body that split those bonds to make them into smaller molecules, which can actually enter the cell and the body can use to generate energy. So essentially, the ordinary sugar that we take, that's not the form that the body uses. It has to break it down into a smaller molecule called glucose. And it is the glucose which now gets incorporated into the cells, and the cells can now burn it. It's like a similitude will be fuel. the fuel that we put in vehicles. In that form, it's not burnt directly. The vehicle has to like spray it, mix it with some air, and under high pressure, apply a spark. And that spark leads to a huge amount of energy which is produced. So it's the same thing with glucose. A molecule of glucose by itself, not much, but through enzymatic reaction, it is burnt inside the cell, and that gives us a lot of energy to be able to do a lot of things.
Oh, let me take you to a glaring example. You mentioned the word enzyme. Enzymes are like when people say they are hungry. It is the inactivity of the enzymes that makes you hungry, because once the food is there, it's the enzymes that sort of attack. And am I layman here? Can you put that down?
No, the two are not directly related.
Okay.
So hunger is actually more of a mental state. First, there is emptiness in the stomach and the intestines, and there's some tendency for the intestine to go through some contractions. And because the individual hasn't taken anything in a while, mentally they feel the need. But also, when you take food, it provides a sense of relief to the well-being of the person. So when you are starving, there is a continuous reminder that the tummy needs to have something, whether it's water or food. So absence of that feeling gives the sensation of hunger or the desire to get in something. So enzymes are released only when there is food. When there is food, enzymes are released and they act on the food in the tummy. But there are various enzymes. There are enzymes in every system in the body. No activity in the body is possible without enzymes.
Senator, let me come back to you and ask you this question. How does one contract diabetes?
So besides there are different types of diabetes. As I said, for the type 1 diabetes that we know actually that we have seen children as young as 2 years old that's happening, and it's autoimmune, it's idiopathic. We don't actually know what is the cause. When it comes to type 2 diabetes, we have risk factors that can prove to have diabetes. Like we said, risk factors include the unhealthy diet, living a sedentary lifestyle, not exercising, physical activity, the use of alcohol, and other disease conditions such as hypertension can actually lead someone to have diabetes. So when someone is not exercising, you may be able to go when you have exercise. So the ones of drug so the important thing is diabetes is very preventive, and when you take the steps, you can actually help yourself learn. Another thing is hereditary. If you have a strong family history of diabetes, for example, you have a mother or father or a sibling that has diabetes, you have a higher risk of having diabetes. We have a third type of diabetes called the gestational diabetes. This is when someone gets pregnant and have diabetes. Most of the time it resolves after the pregnancy. So if this particular person does not take care, they can come back later in their past type 2 diabetes. So these are some of the risk factors that predispose this one to have diabetes.
So naturally, people need to exercise.
Yes, for like she mentioned, type 2 diabetes. So type 2 is essentially a disease